Chock exhaled and nodded. I know, I wanted to, but I couldn't. Couldn't? Or wouldn't? Joan's voice was soft, but her words hit like thunder. Chock ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. This is my home, Joan. My kids, my grandkids, they're here. My business, my life, it's all in Wichita. And mine is in Maryland. The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Joan had hoped, deep down, that he would have had some revelation, that he would have realized love was about compromise, that he would have at least considered moving or splitting time between both places. But looking at him now, she knew he wasn't going to change. You know I love you, Chock said, reaching for her hands. But I can't be the man who moves across the country. I built my life here, Joan. I thought maybe you'd be the one to come here instead. Joan let out a breathless laugh, not from humor, but from disbelief. Chock, I did come here, but I have a life too. I have my grandkids who need me, my daughter, my son, my home. I can't just pick up and leave any more than you can. Chock sighed, his grip on her hands tightening. Then where does that leave us? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied his face, memorizing every line, every familiar crease. He had been one of the best things to come from this entire experience. And yet, sometimes love wasn't enough. I guess it leaves us exactly where we've always been, she finally said. Stuck. The goodbye that wasn't quite a goodbye. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, walking through the quiet streets of Wichita. It was almost as if they were pretending everything was normal, that this was just another visit, another weekend together before Joan would fly back to Maryland. But they both knew the truth. By the time the sun started to set, they found themselves back at Chock's ranch, the place he had always talked about so fondly during their time on the Golden Bachelorette. Joan had pictured herself there so many times, sipping coffee on the porch, watching the horses run freely, but in the end, it wasn't just about a place. It was about the life that came with it, and it wasn't hers. I won't ask you to stay, Chock said, his voice thick with emotion. And I won't ask you to leave, Joan replied. They stood there for a long moment before Chock finally pulled her into a tight embrace. It felt final, like an ending, but also like an understanding. This isn't easy, he murmured. No, it's not. She pulled away first. She didn't. She might never let go. As she walked to her car, she felt the stain of tears welling in her eyes. She had come to Wichita for answers, and now she had them. Love was beautiful, but sometimes love alone couldn't bridge the gap between two separate lives. She turned back once more, just in time to see Chock standing on the porch, watching her go. A part of her wondered if he would call her back, if he would finally say the words she needed to hear. But he didn't. And that was answer enough. As she drove toward the airport, her heart ached, but she also felt lighter somehow. Because now she knew. And sometimes, knowing was the first step toward moving on. A new beginning. Back in Maryland, Joan was welcomed home with open arms. Her grandson's laughter filled the house, and her daughter wrapped her in a warm hug. Did you get what you needed? Her daughter asked. Joan smiled softly. Yeah, I think I did. She had chased love across the country, hoping for a solution that didn't exist. But in the end, love wasn't about asking someone to give up everything. It was about finding someone willing to meet you halfway. And maybe, just maybe, the real Golden Bachelorette ending wasn't about finding love with someone else. It was about finding clarity in herself. Chock Chapel has always been a man of conviction. A retired commercial airline pilot with deep Kansas roots, he spent most of his life in Wichita, a place he swore he'd never leave. The wide-open skies, the comforting hum of aircraft engines, and the familiarity of his longtime friends have kept him grounded, both literally and figuratively. But something, or rather someone, has changed his mind. That someone is Joan Vassos, the first ever Golden Bachelorette, and the woman who's turned Chock's world upside down in the best way possible. When Chock stepped out of the limo on night one, his confidence was undeniable. He carried himself with a quiet strength, a man who didn't need to prove himself with grand gestures. Yet, over the course of the season, he proved time and time again that he was willing to go the extra mile for Joan, sometimes quite literally. But now, as their love story unfolds beyond the cameras, fans are seeing even bigger signs that Chock isn't just serious about Joan. He's willing to leave behind the life he's always known to build a future with her. Yes, Chock Chapel, Mr. Wichita, is about to trade in the Sunflower State for a brand new adventure. And if that doesn't scream, I'll do anything for love, we don't know what does. The clues were there all along. Looking back, the signs that Chock would be willing to relocate have been sprinkled throughout the Golden Bachelorette. At first, he played his cards close to his chest, keeping his feelings about moving vague. But as Joan continued to test the waters with each contestant, Chock began dropping hints that he could leave Wichita if the right person was by his side. The way he lit up talking about travel. While some men on the show struggled with the idea of leaving their hometowns, Chock embraced it. He's spent his entire career flying across the country and beyond, so the idea of moving somewhere new wasn't as daunting for him as it might be for others. The difference? This time, he'd be planting roots with someone rather than simply passing through. His romantic gesture in Charleston. During hometown dates, Chock surprised Joan by bringing a piece of his past with him, his pilot wings. But it wasn't just a symbol of his career. It was his way of showing her that he was ready to soar to new places with her. It was a subtle but powerful moment that suggested he saw a future beyond Wichita. His willingness to compromise. Joan has made it clear that she doesn't want a long-distance relationship. After losing her first husband and spending years focusing on her family, she's at a point in her life where she wants consistency, togetherness, and a partner who is all in. If Chock had any reservations about moving, he never let them overshadow what mattered most, being with Joan. Wichita's loss, Joan's gain. So, what does this move mean for Chock? It's a significant shift, no doubt. He's spent decades in Wichita, building a life filled with memories, routines, and friendships that span a lifetime. But for Chock, the decision isn't about what he's leaving behind. It's about who he's moving toward. And let's be honest, Joan isn't just any woman. She's someone who has brought out a different side of Chock, one that is softer, more spontaneous, and willing to take a leap of faith. While Joan has strong ties to Maryland, where her family is, there's been speculation that she and Chock may settle somewhere entirely new, somewhere that represents their fresh start together. Could it be Charleston, where they shared one of their most romantic dates? Florida, where so many Golden Bachelor couples seem to gravitate? Or maybe even a compromise destination between their two worlds? Wherever they land, one thing is clear. Chock is proving that love is about action, not just words. What this means for their future. Chock's decision to move is a powerful statement about his commitment. It's easy to say, I'll do anything for love, but uprooting your life at this stage, that's next-level dedication. For Joan, this has to feel incredibly reassuring. After all, she's been open about her past heartbreak and the weight of making the right decision this time around. Knowing that Chock is willing to leave Wichita speaks volumes about his intentions. It's not just about winning the final rose. It's about making sure their love lasts beyond the show. And for Chock, this move isn't just about Joan. It's about embracing the next chapter of his life. He's lived in one place for so long that maybe, just maybe, he was ready for a change all along. He just needed the right reason. The final rose and beyond. While ABC has kept tight-lipped about the final outcome of the Golden Bachelorette, all signs point to Chock and Joan being in it for the long haul. And if that's the case, we might just be witnessing one of the most heartwarming love stories to come out of the franchise.